Millionaire abandons his pregnant wife, but years later, at an awards ceremony, he regrets it deeply. New York City, a city that never sleeps, pulsed with an energy that could ignite the dreams of the ambitious and crush the fragile hearts of the naive. The skyline stretched high, illuminated by the promise of success, casting shadows over the streets where the real stories unfolded, stories of dreams made and broken, all in the span of a heartbeat. James Parker stood at the top of a building that reflected his rise, sleek, modern, cold. It was a symbol of his success, one that came at a price he was willing to pay. At 32, he had everything he had ever wanted: wealth, power, influence, and the promise of an even greater legacy. His mind, sharp and calculating, never rested. He surrounded himself with people who fueled his ambition, people like Liam Collins, his business partner, whose loyalty had proven invaluable in his pursuit of more. Liam, unlike James, wore his emotions openly. He admired James for his unwavering commitment to success, even if it meant making difficult choices. "You're building something that will last forever, James," he often said, offering encouragement with a gleam of admiration in his eyes. But James was beyond flattery. His eyes were always fixed on the future, on what could be, rather than what was. Sophia Mitchell, on the other hand, was not a part of this world, or at least she hadn't been. When they met, she was studying at a small college in Manhattan, far removed from the world of billion-dollar deals and high-rise offices. Her warmth was her charm, the kind that made her forgettable to many, but unforgettable to James. She had met him at a charity event, a place where the elite mingled to showcase their virtue. But James had seen something in her that he hadn't expected: genuine kindness. For a moment, his cold, calculating exterior had cracked, revealing something deeper. Sophia had fallen in love with James almost immediately, captivated by his ambition, the way he could command a room with just a look. But she hadn't realized how cold he truly was. His love was conditional, contingent upon her acceptance of his vision, his empire. He often spoke of his plans for the future, of how he intended to leave a legacy that would make his name, but he never spoke of her in those plans, not in the way she had imagined. Their relationship had been intense, fast, and passionate. But it was also fleeting, as though James was always a few steps ahead, never truly present. When she discovered she was pregnant, the world shifted beneath her feet. She had never imagined herself as a mother, but there was something about carrying his child that filled her with hope for a future together. She believed in the possibility of change, believed that James would come around, that he might one day choose her over his obsession with success. But that hope was dashed the night James left. He had told her it wasn't the right time, that the demands of his career left no room for a family. His words were cold, his decision absolute. He left her standing in the middle of their apartment, the sound of the door closing behind him echoing like the finality of a tomb. The weeks that followed were a blur of pain and confusion. Sophia had never felt so alone, her heart breaking as she grappled with the reality that the man she loved didn't want the life they could have built together. Sophia didn't tell anyone at first. She kept the news of her pregnancy to herself, not wanting to burden her friends or family. But Emily Lane, her best friend, had noticed the change. Emily had always been the more grounded one, the artist who saw the world through a lens of creativity, and she knew something was wrong the moment she saw Sophia's eyes, those eyes that once shone with hope and love, now clouded with loss. "Are you okay?" Emily had asked one night, sitting beside her on the couch, a soft smile on her face as she painted the canvas before her. "You're not yourself, Sophie. Something's going on." Sophia's voice trembled as she confided in her. "He left me, Emily. James, he's gone. And now I'm pregnant." The words felt like a weight she couldn't lift, but Emily didn't flinch. Instead, she embraced her friend, offering comfort in silence, the kind that spoke louder than any words ever could. As the months passed, Sophia's world became smaller. She focused on herself, on the child she carried, and on finding a way to rebuild. Emily supported her through the darkest days, helping her navigate the challenges of being a single mother. Despite her own artistic career taking off, Emily never hesitated to put Sophia first, constantly lifting her spirits and urging her to keep going, to keep fighting for a future. Meanwhile, James's empire grew. He expanded his businesses across continents, leaving no stone unturned in his quest for dominance. His relationship with Liam grew even more solid, the bond between them unbreakable as they watched their hard work come to fruition. But something inside James began to shift. There were nights when the thought of Sophia would linger in his mind, an image of her standing at the edge of his consciousness, always just out of reach. But he dismissed it, buried it beneath the weight of his ambitions. It wasn't until months later, when a reporter named Ralph Carter reached out to Sophia, that the story truly began to unfold. Ralph had been following her quietly from the sidelines, sensing that there was more to her than the typical rags-to-riches narrative. He was drawn to her strength, to the way she had risen from the ashes of her heartbreak and built a life that was entirely her own. Sophia's story was one of resilience, but it was also one of unfinished business. James had abandoned her, yes, but she had learned to stand tall in the absence of his support, and yet, as her story continued to unfold, so did James's, his ambition taking him places he hadn't imagined, and a moment of fate bringing their paths back together in the most unexpected of ways. This was the beginning. The stage had been set. But neither James nor Sophia could have anticipated the twists that lay ahead, and soon the world would see how their true connection had always been there, waiting for the right time to emerge. It was a night like any other, yet it was the night that marked the end of everything Sophia had believed in. The soft hum of the city outside their apartment, the light from the skyline casting a pale glow through the windows, had always been a comforting presence. But tonight that light seemed to mock her, casting long cold shadows across the space that once felt like home. James was standing by the window, his back to her, hands clasped behind his back, in a posture that could only be described as detached. His eyes were focused on something beyond the city, a future that only he could see. While Sophia stood across the room, her heart pounding, the silence between them growing more oppressive with each passing moment. "Sophia, we need to talk." His voice was firm, no trace of the warmth she once knew in it. She had felt something shift in him recently, a distance she couldn't bridge. It was as if the man she had fallen in love with had disappeared, replaced by someone she didn't recognize. She looked at him, a lump forming in her throat. "What's going on, James? You've been distant for weeks now. I don't understand." She tried to keep her voice steady, but the fear creeping into her words betrayed her. James turned around, his face set in a way that made her stomach twist. He looked like a man who had already made up his mind. "I'm not ready for this. I don't think I ever was," he said, his gaze unwavering, cold. "This pregnancy, it's a complication, Sophia. It's going to be a distraction. I can't afford distractions. Not now. Not when everything is on the line." The words hit her like a physical blow, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was saying. "A distraction," she whispered, disbelief making her voice tremble. "You're talking about our child as if it's some kind of inconvenience?" James looked away, his jaw tightening. "I've worked too hard to get here, Sophia. I've built something that could change everything for us. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. There's no room for a family in that equation." She wanted to scream, to tell him how wrong he was, to remind him that they had made promises to each other, that love had been their foundation. But there was something in his eyes, a hardness that told her there was no reaching him now. The man she had known, the man who had once whispered sweet promises in her ear, was gone, replaced by this stranger who couldn't see beyond his own ambition. "You're leaving me," she said quietly, the realization settling like a weight in her chest. It wasn't a question, it was the truth. James hesitated for just a second, his eyes flickering with something unreadable, before he nodded. I think it's the best decision for both of us. You'll be fine, Sophia. You're strong. You'll find a way." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving her standing in the middle of the room, her world shattering around her. The sound of the door closing echoed through the apartment, the finality of it ringing louder than any words he had spoken. Sophia stood frozen, tears welling up in her eyes, but she didn't allow herself to cry. Not yet. Not when she still couldn't fully comprehend what had just happened. The love of her life, the man she had believed in so completely, had just walked away. And worse, he had chosen his career over the family they had created together. The days that followed were a blur. Sophia spent hours staring at the walls, at the empty spaces in their apartment that once felt alive with the promise of a shared future. She couldn't bring herself to pack his things or erase his presence from their home. The pain was too raw, too consuming. But life didn't wait for heartbreak. It kept moving forward as